Okay, so right now I'm quarantined because everyone in the world is sick. And this pandemic is something that we've never seen before. People that went to medical school to become doctors, I don't know if they were trained for this. So today we're talking to an emergency room doctor, um, and he's working with all the sick people. Um, and we're gonna find out what the situation is and what he thinks. Dr. Marshall.
What's going on? Yeah. Quick introduction. I'm Andrew Marshall. I went to Meharry for medical school, trained at the University of Chicago. Now I work in Boston at one of the Harvard affiliated hospitals. Um, yeah, it's we were not trained for this. We read about it, but there's no way you could train for this.
You watched movies about it too, I'm sure.
There have been so many movies about it. We should have seen this coming.
Yeah, the movies are the training manuals. But most importantly, you forgot the most important school that you went to.
Oh, I went to Oakwood, undergrad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where we met back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah. No comment. But tell me what the emergency room is like right now.
It's weird. It's kind of eerie. And I know everybody's been watching the news, and everybody has heard about like all the craziness going on in New York. I think here in Boston, we're lucky that we took this thing really seriously, and we shut things down early. You know, I think people were shocked, like when Harvard shut down and when like all of the colleges like asked people to leave the dorms.
Yes.
But those were big moves that I think have, because this is a very densely populated area.
Yes.
So luckily, I think we're at a different place on the curve. I know everybody's been hearing about this curve. We're at a different place on the curve than New York.
Okay.
So what it's like in the emergency room now is like it's a little quiet, and so like everybody that comes in is usually coming in because like it's something COVID related. You know,
Yeah.
they can't breathe. They're coughing.
Okay.
They've got like a high fever that won't go away. The normal stuff that used to come into the emergency room, the people
Yeah.
that like weren't that sick, the people that like were a little bit anxious. That's really staying away.
Okay.
Um, it's got me a little bit worried actually that there are some people that need to come in
Mm-hmm.
that are actually staying home and getting sicker at home because they're so afraid of COVID.
Yeah.
Um, but I at this point, because of like the way things are, I don't even know what we can do about that.
I've been fixing my kids with duct tape so they wouldn't have to go into the emergency room.
Oh, duct tape and some Robitussin.
That's how you do it. Medical school. Yeah. But yeah, we've been being extra careful to make like, hey, listen, don't get hurt right now because we're not taking you to the emergency room. It's not worth.
Yeah.
So yeah, that. So what do you think the repercussions for this is going to be? What do you think it's going to be like when everything's given the all clear?
Well, it's really weird. Like I said, it's almost a paradox, right? But like because people are staying inside, um, we've got like a drop in like the amount of young people that are dying, right? Because car accidents aren't happening. Like
Yes.
people aren't doing crazy stuff, going on partying and stuff like that.
Yes.
But obviously, there's going to be big repercussions. I think when you think about people's jobs, right? Like, how are you going to just go back to working your job like nothing happened, like
Yeah.
after this is done, right? A lot of people
Yeah.
have lost their jobs. A lot of people, because they've lost their jobs, will have lost their health insurance. And that's going to make things like really interesting, when life goes back to normal,
Yes.
because I think not only are you going to be dealing with a bunch of people who haven't had adequate care during this time, but you're going to deal with a surge of people who at some point during this epidemic who were trying to stay home, and they were trying to keep their congestive heart failure
Yeah.
controlled at home by, telemedicine their primary care doc and changing their doses of medication. But they're
Yeah.
going to
Duct
come in
tape.
at some point. Yeah, duct tape, and they're going to be sick. Um,
Yeah.
and so I think, the one good thing about being an emergency room doctor right now is there's a bit of job security, even though there's like a lot of anxiety, even amongst the providers and the
Yeah.
workers and stuff there. It's a little bit frightening to be kind of fighting against this thing that you can't see, and
Yeah.
you know that you're definitely not immune to.
Yeah. 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 Man, but like in church, we always talk about, we don't fight against flesh and blood, but the enemy is unseen. And
Yeah,
like what you do, I think that your occupation is service and ministry is service. And with churches shut down, it feels like you're almost the only one in service. I mean, there's other people, but your service
yeah.
is crucial. So, do you see your profession as ministry in this situation?
Uh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's always a ministry. I think people talk a lot about how much doctors make, but like doctors make a lot of sacrifice. So I think like
Yeah,
for you to go through all that sacrifice, like you have to have, some part of you has to want to minister to people.
yeah,
Some part of you has to like have that empathy. And I think, I look at all my colleagues and stuff like that, and I think they definitely have that spirit
yeah,
of like compassion and you know that kind of like giving spirit, right? When you think about like how people are being asked to volunteer
yeah,
uh, their time, right? Not knowing if they're going to get paid extra,
yeah,
take extra call, because
yeah,
like of this pandemic, and the crazy thing is like the list is long, right?
hmm,
We see firsthand like how sick people can get,
yeah,
but like everybody steps up to the plate. Like I had a coworker drive down to New York to pitch in at the hospitals down there.
man,
So I
yeah,
think that in itself is like, I mean, I definitely miss church, right? That
yeah,
that is a good community and a good place to like decompress and
yeah,
connect with like your fellow man. But I think my other family, the emergency department, and people in the emergency department, the nurses and the techs and the people that clean the rooms and do all the stuff, they're another type of community
hmm,
that is really a ministry.
yeah. I think this thing is demonstrating that you are church now. You got the juice. It's your turn to, and like I don't think medicals. If people were just being a doctor for the money, medical school would weed that out. Like you don't
Yeah,
study for 12 years competitively when it's just for the money. You have to have some kind of passion and empathy. Empathy, like yeah, those people I feel like they're weeded out.
competitive studying is a good way to put it.
Yeah,
Makes it seem like a competitive sport, and it is. It's a grind.
it is. You guys are battling. You guys are like the NFL for saving people's lives.
there's even a draft.
Well, congratulations. So, question, man. What has the emergency room revealed to you about the character of God?
That's a tough question. I think I touched on this a little bit earlier, but like when you think about God, like when you think about his characteristics, like he's like omnipotent, right? All knowing, all seeing, and that's definitely not the emergency room, right? We have no idea what's going to come in like at any given moment. But one
Yeah.
of the best characteristics is that like the ER is, even though it's a crazy place, it's a
Mhm.
compassionate place.
Yes.
And you think about God. God is like merciful. God is compassionate. He's
Yeah.
loving. Um, he kind of like doesn't turn people away when
Hmm.
they're at their lowest. I think those are the qualities that like an emergency department shares.
Yeah.
It's a very forgiving place, right? Whether you're coming in
Yes.
because like something really, really crazy happened to you, or you had a heart attack or a stroke, or whether this thing is self-inflicted, right? Whether you overdosed on a drug or
yeah,
something like that. There's no situation where you come into the emergency department and you're turned away.
yeah,
And I like to think that God is like that as well,
yeah,
like
yeah,
there's no situation, there's no low you can hit where you go to God and he turns you away.
yeah,
And on that note, honestly, like, God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, they're all like the Father, Son, and, the Holy Spirit, they're all kind of intertwined. And Jesus, when he was on earth, was a healer, right?
yes,
Um, and he healed on the Sabbath, which, there's examples in like the whole New Testament where people criticized him for healing on the Sabbath.
yeah,
Um, but Jesus is available. God is available to us like 24/7, right? And
yeah,
that's another unique thing about the emergency department is that it's
yeah,
always open, right? You
yeah,
can't go to the emergency department and it be closed. Right?
yeah,
Where else would you go, right?
yeah,
And it's open whether you're rich, you're poor, you're homeless,
yeah,
whether you're famous or not. Like we all have the same problems and we all go to the same place. And that's the same thing when I think about communing with God. Like it doesn't really matter like where you came from or you know who you were
yeah.
before you came to church, but we're all part of like that Christian body.
So the emergency room demonstrates to you how God just accepts anyone anyhow without asking questions. He just gives you healing and comfort.
Yeah, I mean, hey, God doesn't ask for insurance. We ask for that sometimes, but
Well, you ask afterwards, and I feel like with God, with the healing and comfort, afterwards comes the hard part, the
yeah,
assurance. You,
yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, anybody, even if you have insurance or not, like,
yeah,
we take care of everybody, right?
hmm,
Like, if you have a problem that
yeah,
needs to be fixed,
yeah.
and I think God is the same way. I hope
And
He is the same way.
that's why people go to the emergency room if they know they don't have insurance and they can't go to their provider, they have to go
Mhm.
to the emergency route.
Yeah.
So like if I was going to the emergency room, um, it would mean a lot to me to see a young, positive, positive doctor smiling, um, and seeing as a large proportion of the corona victims are black, it would mean a lot also seeing a young black doctor coming to help me. I know how you stay black, but how do you stay positive in this in this situation?
Um, I think this is hard. I think this is hard whether you're a doctor or not, right? Because I think when like maybe like a week and a half ago, right, when you realize that like this is at least how I felt. You can't do anything that you normally want to do right
Mm,
now. Your whole life is kind of consumed by this pandemic, right?
yes.
We're all forced to act in ways that are really different than we normally act. Um, and like our plans got canceled, right? Our ways of lives got changed. A lot of people aren't working.
Yes.
When I'm going to work, I'm confronted with this thing like right in my face. And then like when I come home, um, it's there. It's there on TV. It's there. It's what everybody's talking about.
Yeah.
You talk to your friends and your family, and that's what they want to talk about. You
Yeah.
know, you, you
The
you go to
news.
class or whatever on
Yeah.
Zoom, and that's
Yeah.
what's going on. They're
Yeah.
talking about that too. So it's kind of hard. It can be a little bit depressing
Yeah.
almost. But on the flip side of that, you have to look at how you know people have kind of reacted to this whole epidemic.
Hmm.
The outpouring of like love and support.
Yeah.
Like I said, like looking at my colleagues going to volunteer in New York,
Yeah.
looking at the people who across the country who have like donated supplies, donated money, and like really tried to like uh, do their best to make a difference. It gives you hope, right? And it actually gives you hope when you have like good outcomes in the hospital. When people come in and they're not doing that well, but you're worried about it. They get admitted, they may go to the ICU. You follow up with them later and find out that they did okay.
Yeah.
Those are the positive things, right? And you
Yeah.
just kind of have to keep an eye on the fact that like like 2 months ago, it was all good, right? We were all living our lives. We all had a lot of great things, and if you kind of push through it, I hope it will get back to normal, right?
Yeah.
It's scary, but you gotta have that faith, and combine that with your faith in bigger things, and the fact that hopefully God's got a plan for you, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how you stay positive, because He won't let anything happen to you that's not in His plan.
Yeah. Do you ever look in the mirror and be like, I'm making a difference? All that competitive studying paid off.
Not very seldom do I actually think that, and I'm
Well,
not a very good at thinking in the moment person.
well, I think you should do that today. When you go and look in the mirror, be like, I'm making a difference. Sally Mae should forgive my student loans. I'm making it happen right
Man, I wish
now.
they should forgive everybody's student loans at this point.
They should. They should.
April should just be rent free, man.
I got a letter
Cancel
today.
all that.
I got a letter today from Fed Loans saying that I was in forbearance till September, and that's almost like a stimulus check to me.
That's right, man. That's a lot of money in your pocket every month.
Yeah, it is. But I might need it. But one last question for you, man. What advice would you give to people to be helpful right now?
Um,
Either help themselves or help others.
yeah, I know it's really tough right now. I think it's really tough to be apart from your friends, to be apart from your family.
Yes.
I definitely don't even want to go around my family, because I feel like I'm putting them at risk.
Yes.
I think that is itself like a little bit overwhelming. So I think the thing is, you got to keep an eye on the goal, right? And the
Yes.
goal is that you keep your loved ones well, right? And we know so much about this like scary disease, but we know so little, right? We know that like the people that look well, don't have fevers, and aren't coughing and stuff like that, could be carrying it, right? And we know that we don't have enough tests to test everybody to make sure you don't have it. So the best thing to do is to be really helpful is keep on this path, stay inside, but still don't lose your social connections, right? Don't fall into that pit of depression. Don't cut yourself off from people. We've all got video chat, we've all got phones. Check in on your family members. Check in on your friends, make sure they're doing okay, stay in touch, and still try to be a part of like your church communities and your social circles and stuff like that. I mean, you may not be able to play basketball with your boys anymore, but you can at least
play basketball anyway. I lost my game at Oakwood. I think I left it there.
Yeah, it's Oakwood could be a rough place to play sometimes.
I like to especially check on my extroverted friends, and then my introverted friends are just having a great time right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
My extroverted friends, I'll be like, "Are you okay? Are you really okay right now?"
Miserable.
Yeah,
it's rough.
I think social media is helpful. Like, sometimes people on Twitter or Facebook, people are like, why are you posting this? Like, what? That's annoying. But now it's like, you have to talk to someone somehow.
It's one of our big lifelines right now, and it's one of the ways to keep up with. It's always been a good way to keep up with people, but like now it's a way to interact with people. It's your really only way to make new friends right now during this pandemic is on social media.
Yeah, sliding people's DMs.
That's a different.
We could be looking at some
topic.
winter weddings.
That's true.
Well, Drew, thanks for talking with me, man.
Absolutely.
And thank you for what you do. When I watch this video in a few minutes, and watch it with my daughters, I'm gonna say, hey, that's Drew. He's helping right now. His student loans and competitive studying really paid off.
Man, I appreciate it, man. Just a quick plug for people who are sitting at home and want to make a difference, think about like, especially in underrepresented communities, especially in Black communities,
Yes.
especially in Latino and Native American communities. This thing, COVID, is hitting us really hard.
Yes.
Think about reaching out. Now is the time, right? Because everybody can see it. Think
Yes.
about reaching out to your state representatives, to talk about, initiate the conversation about changing policies, so that we can all be better when this thing is over. Because the problems that, we're seeing now, where people are getting like really, really sick and disproportionately affected in our communities,
Yes.
has been a problem before, right? It
Yes.
just wasn't so obvious.
Yeah.
And so, there's a lot of good people, especially here in Massachusetts. I'm working with the group, the Massachusetts Coalition in Health Equity, to make some of these changes. So if anybody, is interested, if anybody has a passion for this, reach out to your politicians. Let them know that they need to make sure that everybody gets equitable treatment.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's with everyone being at home, we have nothing else to do.
Yeah.
So,
Watch lots of Netflix, but there's only so much.
yeah. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate you talking to me today.
Hey, thanks a lot, man. It's good to see you.
You too.